Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that's, well, at the very heart of democracy, political parties.
They're probably the most visible institution we have.
Absolutely. For so many people, political parties are democracy. They're the whole scaffolding. They pick the candidates, they set the national agenda, they're just everywhere.
But, and this is the core paradox, they're also intensely unpopular.
Oh, massively. You hear it all the time. Parties are blamed for everything that's wrong with politics. Gridlock, corruption, you name it.
It's this incredible conflict, isn't it? They're somehow both essential and completely despised at the same time.
Right. And that's where our sources really push us to dig a bit deeper.
They do. They force us to ask two really fundamental questions. First, why have parties become so completely indispensable across the globe? And second, something more practical maybe. How many parties does a democracy actually need to work well?
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to get past the textbook definition and really look at the mechanics. We want to understand what they do, the different ways they can be structured, and especially how this all plays out in a place as complex as India.
Exactly. And let's just touch on that definition again. A group agreeing on policies for the collective good. Right there, in that phrase, you have the tension.
How so?
Because to have a party, you have to have partisanship, a really strong commitment to one side. And that, by its very nature, creates political division. Parties are basically just expressions of the major splits that already exist in the society.
And that structure, the leaders, the active members, the followers, it makes you wonder, why can't we just get rid of them? Just have independent candidates for everything.
It comes down to one word. Scale.
Scale.
Think about it. In a huge modern democracy, the government just cannot deal with the vast multitude of opinions of millions of people. It's impossible.
So if you had, say, 543 independent MPs in India.
It would be complete chaos.
Yeah.
Each one would only answer to their local voters. Parties are the tools that bundle all those similar opinions into just a few basic positions. They create a clear direction.
That's a really critical point. If you do the thought experiment, a world with no parties, no single candidate could ever promise a major national policy change.
They'd have no way to guarantee the votes to pass it.
Exactly. Their accountability is only local. So no one is actually responsible for how the country as a whole is run. The central government just becomes, I guess, uncertain.
And, this isn't just a theory. The sources point out that even in these small, non-party local elections, like for a village council, what happens?
The village splits into factions anyway?
Right. They put up a panel of candidates, which is, it's basically what a party does. The rise of parties is tied directly to the rise of big, complex societies that need a government that can actually make and justify decisions.
So they're a necessary simplification machine. Which brings us to how that machine actually works. We always focus on the elections part, but the sources break it down into 7 key functions that are happening all the time.
The first one is the most obvious: contesting elections.
Right. But even there are interesting differences. In the U.S., for instance, members and supporters often get to choose the candidates.
Whereas in a country like India, it's usually the top party leaders making that choice, which tells you a lot about where the power is.
And that centralized power is crucial for the second function, policy and programs. The party takes all these messy, competing views in society and boils them down to a clear stance.
And that feeds directly into what I think is one of the most important functions, number 3, lawmaking.
This was interesting, because we see the debates on TV.
But the reality is that most of the time, legislators vote exactly how their party leadership tells them to. It doesn't really matter what their personal opinion is.
So that party discipline is actually what allows big, complex laws to get passed. Without it, a government could never deliver on its promises.
Exactly. It shifts accountability away from the individual and onto the party as a whole, which leads to function 4, forming and running governments.
Pretty straightforward. Parties recruit leaders, train them, and then they become the ministers who actually run the state.
But just as important is function 5, the role of opposition.
The parties that lose, but not just on the sidelines.
Not at all. They are a vital part of the system. Their job is to voice different views, to criticize the government when it messes up, and to, mobilize opposition. They keep the government accountable.
Okay, so the last 2 are more about connecting with the public. Function 6 is shaping public opinion.
Right. Parties are constantly raising issues, highlighting problems. They use their huge networks of members all over the country to frame the national conversation. A lot of so-called independent pressure groups are actually, very closely tied to a party.
And function 7 And I think this brings us right back to our original paradox, is providing access.
This is so important. For an ordinary person, it's often way easier to go to a local party leader with a problem than it is to try and navigate some government office.
They need a welfare scheme. They need a permit fixed.
And the local party person can cut through the red tape. This is why our sources say people feel close to parties even when they do not fully trust them.
So they don't trust the big national institution, but they rely on the local guy to get things done.
That's the deal. That's the social contract at the ground level.
That idea of scale gets us to the next big question. How many parties are actually good for a democracy? I mean, in India, there are over 750 registered parties.
But only a handful are serious players, of course. So the question isn't the legal number, it's the effective number. How many can actually compete for power?
And the sources give us three basic models. The first is the one-party system.
Like the Communist Party in China, only one party is allowed to exist and govern.
And the material is very direct on this. It's not a democratic option, period. You're eliminating free competition for power, which is the entire point of democracy.
Then you have the two-party system.
Right.
Think the U.S. or the U.K. Power basically just swings back and forth between two major parties.
Other parties exist, but they have almost no chance of actually winning a majority and forming a government by themselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third type, the multi-party system, which is the reality in India.
This is where several parties compete, and you have more than two with a real shot at taking power.
Often by forming alliances or coalitions. We see this all the time. Parties join forces to contest an election together, like the National Democratic Alliance or the United Progressive Alliance.
Okay, but this is where the criticism always comes in, right? People say multi-party systems are messy. They lead to unstable coalition governments that could collapse at any minute. So isn't that a fundamental flaw?
It's a trade-off,
Yeah.
a huge one. But you have to remember, these systems aren't just chosen out of a catalog. They evolve over time because of the deep social, regional, and linguistic divides in a country.
So the instability is the price you pay for representation.
In a way, yes. It allows a huge variety of interest groups that would be completely ignored in a two-party system to have a real voice in politics. For a country with the kind of diversity India has, a multi-party system isn't just an option, it's a necessity.
So we sacrifice some stability for inclusion. And that idea of the Indian context brings us back to the data you mentioned earlier, because this is where the paradox really gets interesting.
It really does. So let's just state the global fact first. Political parties are one of the least trusted institutions on the planet.
No surprise there.
Especially in South Asia. The data shows more people report having not much or no trust at all in parties than those who have some or great trust. So the trust deficit is very real.
And it's the aha moment in the data for me. Despite that low trust, actual political participation in India is incredibly high.
It's stunning. Look at party membership. The proportion of people in India who say they are members of a political party is 11.4%. The global average is 9.1%.
So higher than the global average.
And higher than in many established democracies like Canada, Japan, or Spain.
And it's not a static number. It's actually been growing. Over the last few decades, the number of people who say they're a member of a party or even just feel close to a political party has gone up steadily.
Right, that feeling of party identification. It went from 38% in 1971 up to 53% in 2004. So the question is, why? If people don't trust the institutions, why are they joining them in increasing numbers?
And it comes back to function 7, doesn't it? Access.
It has to be. People need the parties at the local level to navigate the system. They rely on them. The distrust comes from the top-down issues the sources flag, the lack of internal democracy within the parties, the power being held by just a few leaders, and, of course, the massive role that money plays in politics.
So you need the party on your street corner, but you despise what's happening at the national headquarters.
That's the Indian paradox in a nutshell.
That sets us up perfectly to look at the major players on that national stage. I mean, if India's system is built on diversity, the recognized parties should reflect that.
They do. And the Election Commission is the one that grants this formal recognition. It gives them special perks, like a unique election symbol.
And there's a specific bar to clear to be called a national party, right?
Correct. The simplified version is you need to get at least 6% of the vote in a national election or in assembly elections across 4 states, and you have to win at least 4 seats in the Lok Sabha, the national parliament. It's proof that you have a broad base.
Okay, so based on the 2023 notification, let's just run through the 6 recognized national parties and what our sources say is their core ideology.
Let's start with the newest one, the Aam Aadmi Party, or AAP. It came out of the anti-corruption movement in 2012. Its whole ideology is about accountability, transparency, good governance.
Next, the Bahujan Samaj Party, the BSP. Formed back in '84, its goal is to win power for what it calls the Bahujan Samaj, the majority community of Dalits, Adivasis, OBCs, and religious minorities. Its main power base is in Uttar Pradesh.
Then there's the Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP. Founded in 1980, it grew out of the old Jana Sangh. Its inspiration is described as India's ancient culture and a philosophy of integral humanism. A really key part of its ideology is Hindutva, or cultural nationalism.
Right, and their stated policy goals include things like a uniform civil code. They're currently the leader of the ruling NDA.
Then you have the Communist Party of India, Marxist, or CPIM. Founded in 1964, believes in Marxism-Leninism, supports socialism, secularism, and is strongly against imperialism and communalism. Very critical of economic policies that allow free flow of foreign capital.
And they famously governed West Bengal for 34 years straight.
An incredible run. Then there's the Indian National Congress, the INC, one of the oldest parties in the world, founded in 1885. It's described as a centrist party focused on secularism and the welfare of weaker sections and minorities. They led the UPA government for 10 years from 2004.
And finally, a really interesting one, the National People's Party, or MPP.
Yes, formed in 2013. And it's significant because it's the first political party from India's northeast to get national party status.
I mean, just listening to that list, from Marxism to cultural nationalism to anti-corruption, it's the perfect illustration of why India needs that multi-party system.
It absolutely is. And if we tie this all together, what the sources show us is that parties are these fundamental streamlining machines. They take the impossibly complex reality of a society and they distill it into a few manageable policy options. It's what makes representative democracy possible at all.
So what does this all mean? We've seen parties are essential not just for elections, but for the day-to-day running of government and for giving citizens access. And yet, that deep tension remains. They're essential, but they're also deeply flawed.
The lack of internal democracy, the role of money, these are huge challenges.
So here's a final thought. Given that parties are the primary way citizens access the state, and yet that same access creates a dependency that might stop them from criticizing the party's internal flaws, what are the subtle ways that citizens, beyond just casting a vote every few years, could actually push for more internal democracy and less influence of money within the parties they feel close to? What leverage does an ordinary follower really have?
A provocative question indeed. That would demand a different kind of participation altogether.
Until next time, keep digging.